Hello, my name is Joshua Alexander Anderson. Welcome to AP's Roundtable. Today's Roundtable will be discussing the BIPOC experience in Europe. I just want to get it right off. Why are we in Europe? We're in Spain currently. Why did you move to Spain? Why did you come to Europe?
Because I'll go first. So for me, it was more like a holistic experience for me. So I moved here specifically because where I was living in Jamaica, I couldn't be who I am, if you know what I mean. Like I felt like I was in chains all my life. So moving here, I really didn't have a lot of options. More so, Spain was the only option. So I just take it and just came here, and I have no regrets so far. Even though experiences might be a little bit rocky, but I'm here. Yeah, so that's for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I really identify with that. I also chose Spain because I couldn't be who I am, like the way I want to be as a Black queer woman in the U.S. Like, I feel like the U.S. is a lot more conservative when it comes to women's bodies in general, and then specifically as a Black woman, the way people see my body just existing, and then the way I want to dress my body, the way I want to express myself, wasn't okay there.
Okay.
But here, I feel like, specifically in Madrid, I've made a home here, and like I feel like I could be who I am, like 100% and authentic. So yeah,
Love that for you.
Yeah, traveling is something that I've been thankful enough to be introduced to at a young age, and I've known that I've always wanted to live in a different country, especially outside of the United States. So actually, Spain was slightly random. I was just minoring in Spanish and was told about this program to teach English to Spanish students. And then, yeah, I haven't really looked back.
You fell in love.
Yeah, I was living in Japan for a couple years before this, and kind of similar to what Cherish said, in Japan, I definitely felt limited and judged for how I chose to dress myself, express myself. Even just like my body existing, just like being a bit more curvy, it's definitely stuck out a lot there. And so I kind of chose Spain because I felt that I could maybe be more myself here. And so far that's been true. So I've had a good experience so far.
Nice.
I just studied abroad here because I wanted to have fun, honestly, and I spoke Spanish and I was feeling a little lazy. And then ended up loving it and moved back. And I think didn't realize how much freedom it gave me. Even still, like I'm realizing that I've found a version of myself I didn't know existed. And I think that has a lot to do with Spain, but also just not being in the US or something.
100%.
Yeah.
So across the table, like, do we think our experience here is more liberating or proliferating?
Definitely.
100%.
Yeah.
In some ways. Yeah. I mean, I think like obviously the visa stuff, it can feel very
That part.
other than that, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if in terms of immigration, obviously it's always going to be difficult in comparison to like a lot of other immigrants. I think we have it easy. Obviously, American passport has a lot of privileges, especially with the new laws that came out this year. Make it a lot easier for us to stay here. I would say like immigration in terms of like connecting with Spanish people is a little bit more difficult, is what I've found, because it's not that easy to make connections with Spanish people. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm always waiting for like the racist shoe to drop.
Yeah,
Because the concept of racism is very
Different.
Yeah. And conversations are not really welcomed when they start to get critical, and then it just ends with like, well, that's just the culture, and not like, oh, can we change the culture, or is there like, I don't know.
Within the past 2-3 years since I've moved here, compared to when I studied abroad here, I've seen a huge change in the language around diversity and inclusion in Spanish. But in Spanish-speaking cultures in general, a lot of this stuff that we talk about, like BIPOC, for example, that doesn't really exist. They don't have those terms. And that's part of the reason why the conversation can't even happen. You don't even have a way to express it.
The tools aren't even
There's either.
So this brings me to the next question. The Spanish word racializado means to be racialized. So do you guys feel like you are racialized on your daily interactions here in Europe? And like, I travel a lot. I go to Berlin often. Do you feel like you're racialized in, I don't know, at the liquor store? Or we can talk about what a bazaar and a chino is. That's a whole nother.
Constantly. For me, in the metro, in the trains. Whenever, sometimes I would go on the train and you'll have like maybe like some woman or something like sitting there. So I want to sit.
Yeah.
And they would like touch their purses. You know what I mean? And like I'm gonna be really deep now a little bit because for me it affects me in such a way where I've lost my self-esteem coming here. I've lost it like zero. I like now it's coming back a little bit, but I've lost it because of that, because I didn't know what or how to, read the environment. Because many times I'll be in like places and people just be looking like, is this a good stare? Or is this a bad stare? Like I'm confused. So at a point in time, like I was a person I never had low self-esteem or see myself being lesser than anybody else. But that has been broken down completely. But now I'm rebuilding. It needed to happen though, because if I'm going to be living in a foreign country, you have to let loose of certain things and build a new construct. So.
Because you didn't really feel that experience in Jamaica.
That's exactly what I was saying. No, right?
Obviously, majority is
not
versus like
all.
We're kind of used to that.
Yeah.
Because in the U.S. we had to deal with it. Like the way I dealt with it in the U.S. was constant, but here it's not. I feel like it's like racism light, like it's like zero cows. Like I don't know, like zero. Like that's how I feel like it is here for me. But like I've also had some similar experiences with that here, but in a different way. And I can see like maybe as a Black man, it's very different.
It is
because of like the history around like saying Black men is scary,
right?
Especially for white women,
yeah,
right. But my experiences have more so been where, as a Black woman, I'm exoticized, and like specifically by Spanish, like white men, or just European men, white European men in general. But like I'm seen as like it's like they want to conquer me in some way. Is how it feels, like it's the like this whole like colonizer, like colonized type of thing.
There's a real issue of fetishization.
They love to love us.
Racialization and fetishization, exotification are all parts of this experience, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're out of the U.S. or out of, I don't know,
well,
even the U.S.
U.S. included.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the unfortunate reality of like racism everywhere is that Black women are going to be fetishized. We have to deal, unfortunately, with that reality everywhere we go.
It's really weird because in the U.S., like my Blackness and like me being a woman is seen as something bad. And like, if anything, like in my experience, I always had it where like, specifically with white men, they look at me, but like they would never do anything, versus here, they want to touch me.
Yeah.
They want to like, they really objectify me. You know what I mean?
Well, I feel like being your friend, I've just seen like how perceived you are in general. It's like hyper visible. And then immediately that going to being sexualized.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's something that like has become very clear, where I feel that Spain gave me a little bit less racism, because whether I pass or I'm just okay being other because I'm not from here, I don't have that same like spotlight, but it's really intense.
So the next question I have for us is, have you felt profiled here? And it kind of runs off the next one, but like maybe profiled in like, I don't know, a different type of sense. Like, is it violent? Is it trivial? Or like, have you just like right off the bat, this teacher can't give a full lesson, or, like, what does that look like? How you dealt with that?
My first year here, I really questioned living here because of my interaction at the banks.
Really?
Yeah, I had an issue opening up a bank. I was with my friend Danny, who is from California, this like tall, blonde, skinny white woman. We went in, asked for the same thing, same account, and she literally went in, got the account like 10 minutes later, and they were asking me all these questions, kind of like grilling me, and they were like, well, sorry, today we're not going to be able to open up an account with you. And I was just, to me, it was clearly racist, and I was just kind of like, is this what I'm going to expect, like living here, right? So I was like really...
Does that set the tone?
It really set the tone, and I knew that I was going to be up against systemic like issues, but I didn't realize it was going to happen so soon, and the impact it would have in terms of like me accessing money, right? Like I was like, this is how it's going to work.
You need that to
exactly.
It's like a self-esteem thing. Like they're not even letting you exist in this
Precisely,
space.
yeah.
Something very similar happened to me this month. I was scammed by an agency for about 900 euros. And on the phone, they told me to go to the bank, file denunciarlo, right? Do a denuncia and take it to the bank, and they will fight for you. 'Cause in the US, your bank will fight for you.
Yeah, they will.
I follow the instructions I was given on the phone. I show up. The first woman that sees me has me sit at her desk and treats me like I don't know how to read it. Like I don't have a degree in Spanish.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a degree in EU law. It just blew me out the water. Because I know how I look, I'm 6'5". I present as Black,
Right.
which is beautiful. I love who I am.
Of course.
It's like I know right off the bat I'm going to be profiled in the bank. When I have plenty of money, I work hard for my money. I think we all do, right? It pissed me off.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a journey. It's been a journey because where I'm from, small little island, like I've never I knew what racism was.
Yeah.
It's very different when you really know it.
Yeah, I
and you
knew what it was.
experience
But when I came here, like the first moment something happened, like there was a switch, like, you know, and
It's unbelievable. It's shocking.
It is because
Yeah.
I'm looking at myself. I'm like, why would somebody want to treat me this way just because I knew it was
It's just
how I look.
crazy, yeah.
I knew
It's
it.
dehumanizing.
I knew it.
I mean, the for me as like a Latina too, it's like I can't ever forget that I'm in the colonizer's land,
Mhm.
and that the moment they find out that, like when we talk about profiling, I don't get profiled by the police like, in general, but one time when I asked that, I started filming them because they were harassing a Moroccan
Right.
kid, and then they were like, they're pissed.
They were on to you.
Oh yeah, Spanish
And
police. They can like
they
give
They're
you
very
a fine or
aggressive,
something.
yeah.
I think for
when
that.
they said that, they were like, we could take you. And,
You can't
and
record
they were
them.
really like intimidating me. I wouldn't leave because I'm stubborn as hell.
Right.
And I know, I was like, you wish you, like, I don't know. Then the woman asked me where I'm from. Where are you really from? And I said, my dad's from Ecuador. And she goes like, yeah, that's what it is.
Oh.
She's like, you all hang out together. Yep.
Do.
Oh no.
And then they ran my number and they're like, if anything shows up, we're taking you to the station. And I was like, okay, take me to, nothing's going to show up. And she was like, okay. And then they let him go.
Because they always harass those kids.
It's a good thing you were
And
there.
they're kids.
Yeah. I
They're
would
always
never mess
kids.
with the police. That scared me. Like,
Yeah.
they tried hard to get me.
Yeah.
They intimidated me for sure.
They did.
Yeah.
As I said
Well-
before, I was stopped 3 times in the metro. 3 random times. Like the first time I was just sitting, like there was like, I'm just gonna say maybe like 20 people on the thing, and I was only a Black person sitting there on my phone, minding my own business, and I like in my phone texting. And when I look up, there was like 4 people standing in front of me, full blown Spanish. At the time, I didn't speak any Spanish, so they were just talking like, I'm like, huh? At the time, because they didn't show like any badge or anything, so
They were undercover.
they were undercover police. Yeah. So in that moment, like my defensive switch was gonna just chip in. You know what I mean? But then, thanks be to God, they showed their badge, and I calmed down because I was
Yeah,
so
you have
frightened.
to.
You know what I mean? So, and the questions were like, okay, why are you? First question, why were you here? Why are you here?
I'm going to
Yeah.
McDonald's.
Yeah.
Hungry.
Because the thing is, I don't know if you guys know. So I'm a refugee from Jamaica. I came here to seek asylum.
Yeah.
So yeah, at that time I had a red card. Yeah. So police here, when they see you with that red card, it's like an immediate like, I don't know what's the word. The
think I
correct
know
word I
what you
should
wanna
use.
say.
Yeah. It's like they feel as if like they could treat you
Whatever they want.
however they want with that card. Yeah. And now I have the resident card, and the experience is so different.
Wow.
It is so different.
How you're
Just that one card.
status, yeah.
So different.
Orders don't make any sense. Orders are a fallacy.
And what gives you the right to like? Sorry, you're gonna treat a refugee badly? Like,
Don't you realize that they
Why
already
did-
fled something that was
Also,
like
Right.
was it
that?
not you who ruined those like countries? I mean,
Right.
Oh, they
There's
don't
no
care.
self-awareness.
But that's why they did all their dirt, and then they want you to stay there. And
Yeah.
That's why Europeans don't want to see it.
This is a whole other side. I want to see on topic. This is a whole other side comment. Like, if you ask a Spanish or even a Portuguese person about like colonization,
Historical amnesia.
Or they're like,
Yeah.
oh no, we did a good thing.
yeah, they both happen. They both happen. I'm like, colonization, baby. Colonize.
I'm like, why do you think a whole continent speaks
It
Spanish?
happened so long ago. It happened.
It's literally still happening. Like that's the
That's
and
thing.
we
what they
developed.
say.
We developed.
I have
Yeah.
history teachers telling me this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, Okay.
And like they're teaching that in schools, which is
Yeah.
really
I've sat in those classes and I'm like, hey, I'm literally a product of this. What Colon did, like,
Like, I promise you,
what Colon did was great.
I
We love that man.
have like debated with a history teacher in one of my classes because he asked me to do something on World War II related to the United States. So at the time I decided I was writing my thesis on historical trauma, about teaching about historical trauma in Spanish high schools. And so I was like, okay, this is an opportunity to talk about the Japanese internment camps. And like, you know, I think that the students should really learn about this. So this, the conversation was like, started off interesting and I felt like it was like really engaging. And then it took a really interesting turn in that the teacher decided that this was a good opportunity to have a debate. And I don't think
They always think it's a debate.
and I thought, okay, yeah, we can debate this with the students, sure. But no, he ended up just debating with me because it ended up talking about reparations. Because after the Japanese internment camp, the president of the time gave them reparations for what they had to go through. It was,
Not enough, but yeah.
not enough, never
No,
enough.
but
But they did receive some financial compensation. So I was like, well, what do you guys think about the idea of reparations? Do you, and I posed the question about how the Mexican president asked for reparations from Spain, or not even reparation, asked for an apology for colonization.
Right.
And the Spanish president said, well, no, we're not going to do that. That was so long ago, right? And so I tried to start this conversation. I was like, well, what do you guys think about that? And the teacher, instead of giving the students the ability to kind of like think and critically think, which is another issue.
That's a huge issue in Spain.
He decided that he was like, you know what? Yeah, I don't really agree. He was like, yeah, I kind of agree with what the president said. And also, I don't agree with why they were tearing down the Columbus statues. Why would they do that? I don't get that. So, right. So this is during the time, like, a little bit post George Floyd. And we're having these really important, necessary conversations. And he just kind of muted the ability for people to actually think. That's what you're supposed to do as a teacher. You're supposed to give your students the
They don't
ability
do that here.
to think. And then he just kind of silenced it because he sees them 5 times a week and they're going to listen. Well, he's our teacher, right? So it was just like really frustrating because it's like they bring us here. Like often a lot of us are
and we're cultural ambassadors.
We're cultural ambassadors. And then they shut us down because a lot of these teachers, a lot of these people are not experienced enough and have their own, educated opinion to actually have these conversations that are necessary in these classrooms. It's
I
just
don't understand that
frustrating.
they are necessary. I think that's the other thing is that I found that every time I was in a majority white school that was semi-private this year, and it was terrible. But at the end, when I left, the 2 or 3 kids of color that were there were like, you're the best assistant I've ever had. And it was like, I think I'm the only one who's ever opened or like been willing to talk about these things and challenged and just pose questions. And honestly, like at some point it's not even safe to do because it takes such an emotional toll.
It does.
And I'm like I have privilege. I understand that. And still it would like, I would want to leave some classes crying from what kids, and they knew to push my buttons out there. But it was really like, it takes an emotional toll, your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Back to it.
Adding to that, like, because I teach in a school also, I'm an assistant. And maybe like 2 schools, because I've worked at a couple. Some kids remind me that we were owned by Spain. Wow. Yes. Straight off the bat, like, there it is. We owned you. Yeah.
You feel good about that?
That's the language?
Yeah, we owned you.
We owned you.
We owned you.
Like, that's so deep.
I mean, they don't even speak
The land, the people.
They don't even speak English, but they knew how to say that. We owned you.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It already looks like
Straight up.
white supremacy, right? Like, to defend not, like, believing in the trauma and the pain and the fire and the rape.
The humanity.
The humanity that was...
That's how that's the only way.
Yeah, like, being blind to that protects white supremacy.
Yeah.
You are proud of a legacy of death, right? Murder, theft.
I think if we think about more recent Spanish history, like the dictatorship and everything, the whole thing of like not pushing the kids to think critically about things, it has a lot to do with that mindset. And so I think that's an important thing, because that doesn't only happen in Spain, it also happens in Latin America, where like critical thinking isn't a huge part of the school system and the way they teach the kids, and it's on purpose. They don't want you to question it. Because
white supremacy.
Exactly. And that's how they're keeping this legacy of white supremacy. It's intentional.
Like I've been here maybe almost 3 years, and I have a white partner. He's from Spain. But do I have like Spanish friends? I don't. And a lot of what he asks me all the time, like, why do I not make the effort to make friends with Spanish people? No, this is the thing. This is the thing. I think I'm a very open person. I'm a very nice person. I'm easy to befriend. You know what I mean? And sometimes to them, it just seems like it's not personal, but I'm going to say this. And when you say to them, okay, this is not okay, then you're like,
they're like, what?
I don't mean anything by it. Like, you're so sensitive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sensitive.
So
How has like your identity as an American, or how you present, or anything like that, been like a positive, or like you've used it to, how has it like affected your space here?
Yeah.
And here I'm American first, which is weird. And I realized there's certain things about me that are very American, which I would have never like guessed or thought about until I moved here. But then also, like you were saying, I've realized, but I'm a Black American still, right? I don't have the same struggles as someone who's from Senegal, for example.
Right.
It's not as hard for me to get a visa here. It's not as hard for me to be treated. I can see that they treat me differently because of how I dress, because of how I look. Because I speak English, because I have this accent, being an English speaker is a huge benefit.
Exactly.
Right.
If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have our jobs here.
No,
Exactly.
We wouldn't be able to
not.
get a visa so easily if it wasn't for that. So in those ways, I definitely see my privilege, which is an interesting spot to be in as a Black queer woman.
We have papers. We are not sin papeles, so that's
And it's not hard to
truly
keep
a
that.
very different hardship that we just we don't have to experience. So yeah.
Concerning like inequity from like a labor perspective, what are you guys seeing out there? Do you see non-Europeans holding like positions of like consequence or of power?
I would say banks. I've never seen a not white or white looking like person ever. I was excited to see a Black person working in Carrefour. I was like, oh my God. Wow.
You know the one 11 case? I know which one it is.
That was just last year.
Yeah, it's just last year.
Like, like my first year here, I did like a community-led research project, and it was like the economic income of like African peoples in like Madrid Central. And the results were not surprising. The majority like scored under like €1,000 a month. And that's nothing. For those at home in America, that's about €1,000 a month, and you're an adult. You have to do housing, you have to pay for food, etc. And so like it made me really, really ask this question, like, what does labor or economic equity look like, right? Like in the labor field, are we seeing people of color, Black, Indigenous and of color, with good jobs, right?
I've never seen a Latino teacher. Like,
That's
No.
true. Yes. Never.
and there's so many of us.
For there to be so many Latin Americans here, but they're also not in positions of power often here.
Yeah, I remember like before COVID, doctors from Latin America wanted to come and work, and they have the education. Cuba. Like Spain had like some type of law like that like was talking about like their certification and how it wasn't like legitimate.
You don't see that space being carved here. And that's very intentional.
And it's not valued. Like, I think that's the shift that needs to happen. Is not only is it that Spaniards or there isn't big conversation on race. It's that it's not even seen as something of value. Even though you're going to struggle with issues around diversity, you just will. And I think that's where our perspective comes in, where it's like we come from a very multicultural like
Background.
whether or not where we lived was, and we understand, we have seen what it is to have a society with many races. And whether or not you guys want to like prioritize that, they don't, you're going to have those issues. So it's like that shift, the paradigm shift into valuing equity and diversity. So
Exactly.
This is our last question. Thank you guys for your time. Love the panel thus far. How do you guys imagine a more equitable Europe, right? And I want to remind us that equity does not always mean equal. Okay.
Well, actually,
Yeah, I don't rarely mean
it
at
just
all.
means trying to make it a little bit more fair,
yeah,
but not
that's it.
fair.
I think when
It's
I
not
was
fair.
researching some things, first of all, Spain doesn't have a racism watchdog committee
Mm.
like other
They don't
countries
think
in
it's
Europe.
important.
Nope.
They do not have a committee. So what do we have? Like SOS Racismo, which is a nonprofit organization that's just, which is great. It's important,
But
but
it's
it's not a government,
Mm-mm.
It's not backed by the
it's not a
government
government
at all.
organization.
Because they don't think they have a problem.
Yeah.
So we need to start there. Like,
You know what's
So they don't want to
interesting?
realize they have a problem.
Yeah, you know what's
Yeah.
interesting though? They don't think it's a problem because every time I speak to somebody from here, oh, it's not as bad as in America. It's not as bad as in.
Yeah, they say that to us all
But
the time.
racism 0.1 versus 5.0 is still racism. You know what I mean?
It's that people think that
you have a
racism doesn't exist here.
I wouldn't say that.
People think racism doesn't exist here only because it's not as lethal as it is in the US.
Yeah. There it is.
There
yeah,
are
access
guns.
to the guns, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're proud of that. Like you
Yeah.
say, okay, cool, thanks. I mean, that's also a privilege of living here is that I've heard is it's not as lethal
Yeah.
to be
Yeah,
black
Right.
in Spain or of color.
That too. Yeah, for sure.
that's true.
But that's where they're going to stop.
Right.
They gave us that.
It's like at least we don't shoot you.
Basically.
Always.
I was told that
But
once.
yes, thanks.
I was told that once. A man was like, "This is Spain. At least in our country, the police don't shoot you."
Yeah, I remember that.
I was
Mhm.
Imagine the bare minimum.
Thanks for
livid.
letting us live.
Like, how dare you speak to me
Kind
that
of.
way?
How do you answer that though? How do you respond to that?
My jaw dropped. I was like, "You know me."
Nerve,
Yeah.
the gumption, the gall.
The gall. Absolutely.
Like,
Also, too, like I've noticed in classes, like even at school, like because I've mentioned before that I am part Filipina, but I don't think anyone remembers. They only see me as American, especially because my features, I don't look super Asian. But I mean, even in the classes, like the teachers, like when they're teaching the kids vocabulary, like, and they'll say rice, they'll just all start pulling their eyes back.
Yeah.
And
that
they're
makes me
just
so
like
angry.
they're always doing that all the time. And like if I have to have them describe a photo and there's Asian people eating a meal with rice, they're always just immediately just like pulling their eyes back, like making funny noises.
Yeah.
And but it's crazy because like kids are kids, but like the teachers engage too.
yeah, and they don't
So-
see us wrong.
And they
They don't
don't.
do anything about it.
And if anything,
Yeah.
they will
They'll
they'll
defend it.
keep with them. They'll start
Yeah,
laughing.
yeah.
Just to like top us off, this can go however we want to go.
Mhm.
Casey, why do you want to? Because I know you want to stay in Europe. I live in California. I literally flew out here just for this project,
Yeah.
and we were talking about this the other day. And you said you were enjoying yourself here. So what is it that's like keeping you in? We can all answer.
Yeah. I guess for me too, it takes a while to like adjust to a new place. So I sort of feel like I'm still kind of finding my footing and I would like to like have a bit more time here to see where it goes. And yeah, I don't know. I am enjoying my time here. I feel like, especially in Madrid, it's quite open. I feel like it's very normal to like express yourself kind of whatever way you want. I mean, I don't know. There's still issues, and I feel like I'll always kind of maybe feel fetishized at times, but I feel like here it's been less than in Japan and even in the US sometimes. I think especially when people find out that I am Filipina, they get like very excited and they automatically get very dominant. And that's like a whole other separate issue that I have to also work through in being more like bold and whatnot. But I feel like so far here I've felt a bit safer than usual. So I'm kind of excited to see, I don't know.
Future looks like.
Yeah, what other experiences I could have. But
There's something freeing about Madrid. Or
yeah.
It is. It is. For me, because now I speak a little bit Spanish, I can communicate. So what I realize is that when you get to talk to them, I mean, the bad experiences are going to always be there.
Yeah.
It's never going to stop. But the more you can integrate yourself into the society, the more comfortable you feel. Because versus when I just got here, like, it's a total different ball game. Like now, I'm able to go out, socialize, just talk to people. I'm feeling okay. Yeah.
Once you find your community here.
Yeah.
And I do feel like the community that you find, if I'm only really friends with other people from not Spain, honestly.
Same, yeah.
It's hard to integrate with the Spanish people.
It's hard.
difficult.
I don't
I don't know
trust
why.
a lot of them.
Yeah.
Also, but
Same.
what you do find is this, and the people who were like had to leave or did leave, chose to, whatever it is, and think critically and create community in really beautiful ways.
Like-minded people.
Exactly.
Do like art. Like, I don't know. It's just, it feels, when you find those spaces, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, even that I've like fallen into this, like I've never done anything like this before. And I got to like perform in a show recently, even though I haven't been here that long yet. And I don't know, I feel like there's been a lot of unique opportunities here that I haven't found in other places. So,
Well, to close this out, who'd like to close this out with the last comment?
Well, can I just add something?
Absolutely.
About you?
You're closing this out.
So, getting to know you, I don't know if you knew this, but knowing you has, it gave me so much comfort being here in Madrid. Like in my earliest stage when I met you, just being around you and stuff, you made me feel like, okay, you're there, I'm here.
Yeah.
Like seeing you here, doing what you're doing, I felt like it's okay for me to be here. Yeah.
Taking up
I really
space.
felt- yeah.
Yes.
Let's take up as much space as we can. Thank you everyone for joining us for 8-piece Roundtable, the BIPOC experience in Europe.
Of course.
It's a wrap.
Yay!
It's a wrap for you, boy.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was kind of cute. Oh, cute.
Visibility is so important.